Are we getting B-roll of this? This is the funnest thing in the whole place. Mother. It's menacing, it's deliberate with its movement, and it almost looks like a gymnasium.
Yes.
Right? You've got the weights on the rack, 110 kilograms, 270 kilograms. You got the weights over there.
You want to check?
I trained this morning, I'm good.
We are living in a time of greatly accelerated technologies. It wasn't too long ago that our timelines relative to technologies were measured in centuries with periods like the agricultural and industrial revolutions.
Enter medical robotics. These surgical robots will both assist and advise in surgery, and one day be able to perform the surgery as the surgeon stands by and watches.
Now, we're ratcheting through an era in technology that very few are comfortable with and nearly no one can keep up with. When you consider the iPhone made its way into our hands a little over a decade ago, today, most of us would likely sacrifice a limb instead of giving up our iPhone. Have we already become bionic? And is it just a matter of time until that computer is attached to us?
When they hear robotics and they're sitting around the kitchen table, what do you think they think about surgical robotics?
Oh, I really do think people think of something moving like this and it's going to just take over and no humans are going to be around anymore, and I don't want to necessarily have surgery with a robot.
Look, we're all a little fearful of fully autonomous. There's a bit of that hesitation.
Corindus. It's a robotic system that saves hearts and brains. That means a heart attack or a stroke.
The key here, though, is that this robot provides a teletherapeutic solution. That means it can bring a clinical solution for stroke over a 5G network, where the surgeon can be hundreds of miles away and be saving a life, repairing a heart from a heart attack, or salvaging brain function due to a stroke.
There's a blood flow blockage, and there's a few-hour window, the magic window, where these highly skilled and in-demand professionals need to intervene as soon as possible. And if you're not near a stroke center, you are going to live a remarkably different life than if you were. Mark Tolan, the CEO of Corindus, and I chatted about how robots are already deeply insinuated into our lives. We just need to know where to look.
So what Corindus is doing, what telerobotics does, is opens best-in-class care and best-in-class technology in a borderless fashion, arguably, when we really take it downrange.
Yeah, and we typically think that this applies to rural communities. So you've got a hub in Kansas City, and then you've got a spoke hospital in Hays, Kansas, 150 miles away. Clearly applies there, just from a geographical standpoint. But it also applies in urban settings too. I'll give you a great example. We're working with a hospital in New York right now on a remote planning project. But what's interesting is the gap in New York is Queens. So Queens has 2.4 million people. It's the 4th largest city in the United States. And they don't have a comprehensive stroke center. So if you have a stroke in Queens, there is not one single hospital for you to go to that has the full neuro capabilities to treat you.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, the project here is, okay, how do you take what's built in Manhattan and then transport that to different boroughs of New York?
Because it doesn't replace the doc and it doesn't replace the team. In this situation, it really creates more opportunities because now you can have 15 stroke centers. And while you may have one doc who's on call to service those 15 via a console that's miles away or states away.
It's essentially transporting the specialist to the patient versus the patient being brought to the specialist. So that's what happens.
At scale too, though.
Correct. And you can do it within minutes versus hours. What we like about the whole concept around do robotics replace people is that we always use the analogy around the airline industry. The airline industry is inserted technology into the equation a long time ago, and they did it all for safety. So when they brought in technology like autopilot, computerized algorithms, it didn't mean the pilot went away. It just meant the pilot became more cognitively aware of exactly what was happening because they weren't asked to do all that work themselves. So then they can start to look for problems that happen during the course of flight. And so if you are Sully and you need to land the Hudson, you're there to do it. However, if the flight plan's going well, then why not be more cognitively aware of what's going on versus being physically required to do things? So you're actually thinking about the decisions along the pathway of that, treating that patient. And you're determining whether or not that is the appropriate pathway or not, so that you can then change the pathway and augment that, or you could then let it run its course, similar to what a pilot would do. But I always tell people when they ask me, hey, are you going to replace doctors? I said, well, would you get on a plane with no pilots? Or vice versa, would you get on a plane with just pilots and they said, all of our computers are down and we don't really have a flight plan, but we're really good pilots.
I ran through that second iteration in my head. I think I would get on the plane first that had no pilot, that the computers were kick-ass. Travelers, there's no computers on the plane today, but
we're really good pilots.
We're really good pilots.
It's funny, whenever I have this conversation with people, the pioneers think about how to enable it. Right. And then the followers think about how to disable it. So if we have more pioneers on the same side of the table with us, they're trying to enable it, it'll work.
While the US is quickly becoming an automation nation, so is the rest of the world. We are headed to Augsburg, Germany, to visit one of the world's leaders in the industrial robotics world, KUKA. When one thinks of Germany, immediately we think of precision engineering, and yes, robotics. And we found every form and function of robotics there. Not too long ago, KUKA took their expertise into the medical device and healthcare marketplace, and they've been delivering therapeutic and diagnostic robotic platforms to their MedTech partners around the world. I got to spend time with Rainer Bischoff, the Vice President of Corporate Research at KUKA. 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer. It's the second leading cause of cancer death in women, right behind lung cancer. Early detection and intervention means moms, sisters, grandmothers, and daughters are sticking around, continuing to make this world a better place.
We took an MRI,
Or an MRI
before, we detected a lesion. So what we are doing is we are scanning the breast. We get a 3D model of the breast.
Yeah.
We match it to the MRI data.
Yeah.
And then in the end, the robot is computing the best pose where to position a through hole from which you can take the biopsy.
I have an old picture that's really good picture. The ultrasound is live though. Mm-hmm. It doesn't quite have the exact precision, but I can use technology.
Features in the images, I can align those features and are able to match them, and then to find the right spot where I should take the biopsy, and the robot is helping the doctor to find that position. So rather the doctor holding the ultrasound scanner manually, trying to find the right position, now the robot is helping the doctor to find that position and even to help him to orient the biopsy in the right way.
So assist, advise, but still live the final movement in the hands of the doctor.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So we're giving the doctor much more information live to allow him or her to use the protocols that they went through in college or university.
Exactly. Exactly.
We live in a data-rich world. In fact, dataism might be the new religion. We have quickly moved into a cyber-physical, integrated world, and a majority of us don't understand it, and as usual, that which we do not understand, we demonize. Look, there's no going back. Technology has never gone backwards. You had better get used to it, or at least try and understand it.
My next destination is Dublin, Ireland, where I sit down with Scott Hunnekens, who is recognized as one of the true data, automation, robotics leaders in the industry.
Scott was the CEO of Verb Surgical, which was a joint venture between Johnson & Johnson and Google, and they were developing the world's most sophisticated surgical robotic platform the world has ever seen.
you've run some major corporations, billion-dollar corporations, and most recently ran Verb Surgical, one of the most sophisticated surgical robotic platforms the world may ever see.
Yeah.
And there's people who worry about robots coming.
We're all humans, and there's 7.5 billion people on Earth, and only 2.5 billion people have access to surgery. 5 billion people don't. So how do you solve for that problem? And robots are an option, and they're part of that solution.
How should people think about surgical robotics? Pro, con?
Everyone thinks robot, and you immediately go to, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And the movies,
Terminator.
and Terminator, and you're like, I don't want that dude coming in and operating on me.
So it doesn't replace the surgeon today.
No.
It augments the surgeon.
It augments the surgeon. They can see things they couldn't see. They can have fine motor control that they couldn't have before. Look, there's a general fear. I've been in a lot of surgeries, and like Intuitive Surgical is the leader, and it's this big system that comes over, and it's claustrophobic, and it can be scary and intimidating for people. And we need to understand that, and we need to build systems that interface with humans, that have a more human, empathetic feel. But the reality of it all is there's a tremendous diversity of performance that exists in surgery. So if you're in different geographies or within the same hospital, like, how do we democratize surgery? How do we make sure that every person goes in and can get the same level of service? That's hard without an interface like a robot. So yeah, you think of Terminator, but you also think of things, you probably don't think of things like Google driverless car. That's a robot. I mean, it's basically got all these sensors, and it's reading from these different inputs, and it's driving. Just like, the smartphone activated all these other apps. How many companies are there now with $10 billion valuations or greater that have changed our lives since 2007? From, Airbnb, where I can book a hotel.
Uber, Waze, right?
Exactly. All of these apps where you needed mobile. Without mobile, you couldn't do them. Without the robot, you can't do them. Now with the robot there, with connectivity, creates all these new possibilities.
Yeah, I like that thought a lot, and I hadn't even thought about that.
We will be the very first generation that will rely on a machine to do thinking for us. What are we leaving behind? What are we moving towards? What future are we setting up for our next generation? So many questions. You're welcome, TrueFuture.